Here we are in Salmo. Welcome, Nicole.
Thanks everybody for showing up. This is a lovely place to gather as it's another drizzly campaign day. Just came from Preston this morning. Wow, it actually drove all the way around. Yeah, it's been a full day. And I'm happy to be in Salmo because I've not had this opportunity yet to meet with your community. To acknowledge and express our respect for all those who have stewarded these lands before us, and to acknowledge that we are on traditional territories of, well, here we've got Sinites, there's also Smock, and the Okanagan, the stilts from the Okanagan to the west of us. And the lands here are unceded. There's some pretty interesting stories going on in our communities right now in this regard. The Sinites are at the Supreme Court, and we're waiting to hear about what official status they're going to be granted by our colonial government. Great. Yeah, and the Toronto are actually working on treaty discussions as well. So there's lots going on, and I will endeavor to be an ally, and I would like to also acknowledge my privilege, and I hope to leverage that privilege in regards to those relations and improving them over time. We're just at the infancy of improving those relations, and look forward to that as well. I guess I can give you a little bit more information. Everybody seems to know quite a bit about me, so I don't want to lecture everyone for too long. I would love to hear questions when I'm done, but maybe I can just reflect for you what I've been hearing in our riding. The biggest issue I've heard is that people don't feel represented in this riding. And Alyssa and I were just having a conversation about why is that, and how can we improve that, and being open to hearing what is a concern needs to be improved in this riding. So I look forward to, if I'm elected, improving our communications between constituents and the MLA, and I will endeavor to improve that situation in this riding. Beyond that, there's of course many issues that are raised, and first one out of the mouth of Salmonians, Salmites, was again clear-cut logging and forestry practices in our riding have been dismal, and there's been no action from either the Liberal or NDP governments in improving our forestry practices, and that is probably the biggest issue that I'm hearing across the riding. Not only is it damaging to habitat and species, but we're damaging our watersheds. There are 44 watersheds around Kootenai Lake that have logging permits in them, and we know that the practices locally are clear-cut practices. So we would really like to see improvements to our forestry practices, and everybody is aware that we are the party that represents that. I'm really excited, and tonight I will be talking to Sonia Firstenau, our new leader. She has been working on professional reliance. Do people know what that means when I say professional reliance? So essentially the way our forestry is operating right now, and mining, is that those who are doing the logging are responsible for deciding whether it's environmentally friendly enough, if it's sustainable enough. We do not have third-party, unbiased parties helping us make those decisions. So Sonia has been working really hard on this file, and I'm excited to hear from her tonight how far she's gotten and what the next steps on that will be. So I am committed to improving forestry practices for sure. Other issues coming up right now, I want to talk a little bit about mental health. We know that healthcare is tough to get in our rural ridings to begin with, but given COVID and climate change is weighing heavily on people, and given the isolation that our seniors are facing right now, I mean, even just talking about it makes me want to cry. I've had now close to 10 people cry at the door because we're knocking at the door, talking to people, there's a lot of grief and a lot of separation that people are trying to deal with. So I'm really proud that the BCP party is committing $1 billion to mental health alone. And I can see how that investment will, it's not a health issue only, right? If we're talking about mental health, it goes across demographics. People of every age can benefit from mental health services, and we want to make that a part of our public system under MSP, make it free, make it accessible to everybody. That's a big one for us. What else in this writing am I hearing right now? Those are the big ones, for sure. I don't know if that feels like enough of an intro for me. I'd love to go around the circle maybe and see if there's anything else that you would like to hear about from me while I'm here in lovely Salmo. You want to start maybe? Nope. Want to go by hand? Yeah. Okay, Bo.
Yes. One of the things that has impressed me about this new Green Party, if you will, is I noted earlier that you have become the party of social justice. And one of the things that has really caught my eye is your whole notion of misrepresentation from Liberals in the NDP, and you talking about a way to circumvent that is by local and community control. Can you flesh that out somewhat? And how would that look in terms of implementation?
Thank you. So our approach is hyper-local everything. We want our own autonomy to make decisions in our communities. For example, I hear in Salmo, Tova showed me that we went by the creek and talked about how when flooding is coming and you're being warned that decisions are being made about the control of it, and even how communities are being reached out to, that it's a centrally controlled decision making and maybe not the best approach within the community to floodwaters, for an example. So that would be, and I would say across every sector we want more local decision making and more local control. A big piece of that would be backing it up with funding. So when I'm talking to municipal and regional governments, they are telling me locally that they have about 10% of our taxation funding, but they have 80% of the responsibilities to meet taxpayer needs. So there is a huge gap between what we expect in our local communities from government and how much they're paid to support that. So I would say the biggest issue is addressing the funding gap there, and that would be a big piece of what we do. I think that if we look to our forestry industry again, if we look to Site C project, if we look to LNG, there is billions of dollars that we are channeling, essentially sending out of our communities and then out of our province. And so redirecting our resources, keeping our resources in our communities and doing something with them, whether it's creating beautiful wood products or what have you, that's, we need to redirect, turn it around, and give us our own autonomy to make the best decisions within our forests, within our communities.
Could I pick up on Bo's thing there, that I think that regional autonomy, local jurisdiction is very important. It needs the reinforcement and backup of the province in real public policy. And one of the things related to forestry that could make a difference, it's not in the party platform, but it's a potential, is to take those crown courts and make them adhere to the ESGs. It's time that they began, especially the forestry. There's 3, I think, crown corporations that don't have any responsibility to environmental social governance. And they're corporations. They make money. So that might be something that would provide the necessary back wall for local jurisdictions, because the danger is just being local and getting it right locally, but the pebble doesn't ripple out, it doesn't have reinforcement, and it doesn't go farther. So that was just my thought.
And I think it's good to note that municipalities and regional the regional districts are just a product of the province, actually. So the province is responsible. Absolutely. Yeah.
In some respects, it seems what you're talking about with more regional control, community control, is an extension of democracy, you know, and again, I truly believe that there's no problem with democracy. It can't be fixed with more democracy, and you people are addressing that issue, and again, that's something that I'm becoming greener all the time, you know, and it's because of these new policies, and that's
Thanks, Bo.
I have a question I'd love to ask. Throw it out there. I don't know if there's a ready answer for it, but how would the Green Party feel about looking at rebooting the BC Hydro standing offer program for up to 15 megawatts of renewable energy generation, which was this ready-made model that they had, and tweaking it for greater community control of energy. Do you think that's something that would be worth bringing to the table?
Absolutely, and it sounds like I have my advisor here to tell me exactly what that should look like. Any sector required, in my mind and in our minds, needs to be localized, and energy security is a huge piece, right? We want water security, we want housing, we want food, we want energy. Energy is, four human rights, frankly, that we want, right? So if we can gain local control, we've got the desire in our riding to be generating our own power. We've got huge interest in, it's the farm in Creston, the Full Circle Farm, right? They actually can fully run their farm with their own energy that they create, yet the system does not allow them to do it. So yes, is the answer to that, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks for raising it, and I will be in touch.
So will I.
You have offered, and I haven't forgotten.
Can I ask one thing about the party platform? There is a blank in there that I could not, it didn't seem Green Party to me.
Okay.
And one is, it's a line about, if we, corporations will do the right thing if given half a chance. But we know they wouldn't.
Where did we say
Well,
that?
It's in there. It's
Okay.
in there. It's a copywriter, good flirt. And it's in there, and it needs to come out, because they don't. Voluntary professional reliance is the same thing as voluntary compliance. And they don't exist in the corporate world. They don't exist. So, a deep and abiding regulation, monitoring, evaluation, and real consequences, and polluter pays,
Yes.
that's a beginning.
Yes. Yes.
But I think that needs a little rewrite in the platform. Just
I appreciate that feedback, and I am fully aligned with you.
It's promotional text, but whatever.
I can remember the moment that I learned not to rely on corporations to do things voluntarily. So I studied at the University of Waterloo, and I did co-op, so I would go to school for a term, and then I'd work for a term, and I worked for the then Ministry of Industry, Trade and Technology in Ontario, and my job was to research and analyze the effectiveness of voluntary action, and it happened to be on the environment before I was even interested, frankly, in that. And I learned very quickly that asking corporations to do things, it just wasn't happening. And this was in relation to the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And they wondered whether, can we just put in this voluntary, and will it happen? No, it will not. So I agree with you, and I will look into that. Thank you for bringing it up.
Can I say another thing about language in the platform? I'm sorry.
I don't think anybody minds.
The ear goes, right? So, it does. It's this whole concept of reconciliation. There was never least in English. You know? So I would love to see that recast.
Fair enough.
And I mean, the settler colonial invasion at the border of BC, they couldn't even be bothered writing treaties.
That's right. They were done by the time they got
They
here.
were done.
Yeah.
So I think recasting that and the 94 recommendations, those are real. If you want to know what reconciliation, which
Or whatever should be called,
the
yes.
word it should be,
Mhm.
those 94 recommendations are that.
That's right.
Nobody needs to reinvent
No.
what the TRC and the Royal Commission, any missing and nobody needs to reinvent anything. It's all there.
Agreed.
If you,
Agreed.
you can take that.
Yeah. Agreed. What's the word?
I don't know. It's jingoistic now to me, reconciliation, you know?
We didn't come up with that. We took that from
Oh, no,
Australia,
I know.
right? That
Yeah.
started there.
Yeah.
Truth and reconciliation.
Truth part's okay though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But you
Let's
can't
say
have,
truth.
you can't have undrift and then what the Canadian translation of free, informed, and prior consent. Those two things are completely at odds. You know, you don't get to say no. Doesn't mean.
That is not consent. Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, well, we don't want that. Well, sorry, that's not money you're off.
It's actually happening. I mean, that's how I feel. I think how our communities feel generally is that there's these ideas and big projects that are coming through, and we're just being informed. Actually, there's been no
Yeah.
true consultation, and I think even in our communities, we can understand how that must have felt
Yeah.
to a degree.
Well, they think we're stupid.
Well, we started like actually contacting our government right now, that's how I feel. Like, we can pretend that we can, contact our government, but, the response is like minimal to nothing. Like, they went around and they had all those engagement, meetings for the caribou and the forestry. BC doesn't even have a species of risk,
That's right.
so why did they waste our time? Because they didn't listen or take our opinion really, so I feel like.
Well, apparently it's not required legally, right? They just need to actually have the form in which discussions happen.
Happen, but then what do they do with it?
There's no requirement past that.
That was it.
It's for show.
It was,
Yeah.
it was.
Exactly. And
It's a
we
waste of our money, right? And our time. Of course, there's nothing.
will put.
Well, some of us are really concerned about the lack of bus service in
Mm.
Salmo. We, for years, never had anything except the Greyhound. And then, we finally got 3 days a week to Nelson. So the issue was that, to Fruitvale has buses all day long that go back and forth to Trail. But we can't connect to the Fruitvale transport system, or the trail transport system, by bus, because there is no bus between here and Fruitvale, even though it's like 15 minutes drive away. For young people who want to get away and can't afford a car, I think a bus service would be really, really helpful for young people. There's no bus from here to Castlegar, where Selkirk College, where young people want to go to college.
And the buses are full from Nelson. If they are traveling from here to Nelson and then to Castlegar, they were struggling to meet the demand.
Yeah, the Ministry of Transport did send somebody out to consult locally, and they had one of those open meetings. Not very many people did show up, actually, only about maybe 1,000 or so. But their conclusion was that there wasn't enough ridership.
That's always the excuse, yeah.
Yeah, so there is apparently the Fruitvale Trail connection is sponsored in part by tech, the industry there.
Mhm.
So they have a leg up on that for the regional bus service, but definitely we are cut out of the regional bus service there.
All right, call Porcupine, here's our opportunity to be a good corporate citizen.
Please stop burning that stuff in your yard too. That would be really great.
There's no bus. So we were looking into a cooperative bus for Salmo. We haven't gotten very COVID, nobody wants to take the bus, I guess, anyway, I'm not sure about that.
And that's, I mean, the green, we've been looking at that, right? And we know so I live in Blewett, and we had a little bit of bus service when Pacific Insight was open to help transport their employees around, and we could take a bit of advantage of that. But now that Pacific has been sold to a foreign company and we no longer house all those employees here, that bus service has gone. So you're right, ridership is the big issue, and I think that I'll be curious to hear your feedback on this actually, because one of our policy in our platform is to help develop car co-ops. So that helps if you just need a vehicle, but you have to have a license, and there's gonna be a lot of people who need transportation who can't be a part of that co-op. So I think there's a combined idea there, not looking at mass transit for our small communities because we don't have the ridership, therefore the big centralized transportation organization will not service us. It's been going on forever, right? So I think a community built, again, how can we do it in our communities and make it accessible to everybody? And I think we can have a co-op driving situation too, right? Not just the vehicles, and of course they'd be electric, but
Yeah.
right? But you know, people are like, oh, we shouldn't be investing so much in electric cars, and that mass transit is where we need to put our efforts. I agree in the big cities, but it doesn't really help us address transportation issues in our small communities. I do think bringing buses between major cities, that would be the way to go. And we know that Greyhound's, you know, struggled to support it financially, so we have to look beyond simply ridership and consider the benefits of, if we can move people around, what are the other benefits we're gaining? And let's start doing the math on that part too, right? If we're getting people to the healthcare they need, or to you know, their family members, there are intrinsic benefits there that we're not tracking financially. So that's part of what we'd like to see, is better accounting per se for benefits. So what do you think of the car idea and the co-op idea for Salmo? Is that something you think could work here?
Yeah, there is actually an update to that. At the last village council meeting, they're applying for a SARA grant.
Sorry, which grant?
It's the community, it's CERIP, I believe.
Okay.
And there is, one of the things, Farrell Siegel, one of the counselors, would be here, but he's writing that grant right now. So about 120K, it's based on, is it Medicine Head, Alberta has the same thing. It's a community bus. It's an EV that responds through an app. So you know, all the bookings come in on the app, and the driver goes around. So you know, if you're more than 500 meters from the one bus stop here, you're okay. And it gathers people up and goes, but it's very community related. It has a route, so there's a loop, I think, going, you know, up this way to Castlegar and then back around. But they're writing a grant for that now. Who knows? You know how that rolls. And it would employ two people and be an EV. So yeah, part of the thing with our bus problem is it's paratransit fundamentally. It's actually a healthcare service.
Yeah.
So it's down to the nuts.
Right. And I get a little concerned when I hear grant writing, because
Yeah,
that's
I
not
know.
a sustained funding
No,
source.
it's